There's something deeply unsettling about a person who quietly walks away without anger. No shouting, no emotional speech, no desperate attempt to explain themselves one final time. One day they're there, constantly replying, constantly understanding, constantly forgiving, and then suddenly they're gone. The energy disappears, the attention disappears, the emotional access disappears. And what's strange is that this silence often creates more panic than any argument ever could. Because most toxic relationships survive on emotional reaction. The moment you stop reacting, the entire dynamic begins collapsing under its own weight. I didn't understand this at first. For years, I believed being a good person meant staying available. I thought maturity meant endless patience. I thought if I just explained myself clearly enough, cared hard enough, stayed calm enough, eventually people would treat me better. But the opposite happened. The more understanding I became, the more people took from me. The more accessible I became, the less I was respected. And eventually, I realized something uncomfortable. Some people don't value your kindness. They rely on it. They feed on it. They become comfortable knowing you will always return, no matter how badly they treat you. So I decided to try something different. Not revenge, not manipulation. I simply stopped participating. I stopped over-explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped defending every boundary. I stopped chasing conversations that left me emotionally exhausted. And most importantly, I stopped reacting instantly. What happened next genuinely shocked me. The same people who barely valued my presence suddenly became obsessed with my absence. People who ignored messages suddenly double-texted. People who acted cold suddenly became emotional. People who had endless confidence while controlling the dynamic suddenly became anxious once they lost access to me. And that's when I realized something powerful. Toxic people often mistake your constant presence for weakness. They assume your patience has no limit because you've never shown them otherwise. But the moment you quietly remove yourself, they're forced to confront a reality they never expected. You can leave. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about protecting your inner peace from people addicted to chaos. Epictetus warned that the fastest way to lose yourself is to become emotionally dependent on external validation. But modern life trains us to do exactly that. We live in a world obsessed with instant responses, emotional reactions, and constant availability. People measure their worth through notifications, attention, and validation. That's why silence has become so psychologically powerful. Silence interrupts the cycle. Silence forces reflection. Silence exposes who respected you and who merely enjoyed access to you. And most people never realize how addicted they are to your emotional energy until it disappears. There's actually science behind this too. Studies on intermittent reinforcement show that inconsistent emotional rewards create stronger psychological attachment than consistent ones. It's the same mechanism used in gambling addiction. Your brain becomes trapped chasing unpredictable emotional validation. Toxic relationships often work exactly like this. One day someone ignores you. The next day they shower you with affection or attention. Your nervous system becomes addicted to uncertainty. You start craving their approval because your brain begins associating rare validation with reward. That's why walking away feels so difficult at first. You're not just breaking emotional attachment, you're breaking neurological conditioning. And toxic people sense when that conditioning is slipping away from them. What fascinated me most was how differently people reacted once I stopped feeding the dynamic. Some became angry immediately. Others became strangely nice. Some tried guilt. Some pretended not to care while constantly checking whether I still noticed them. It was like watching masks fall off in real time. The silence revealed personalities more clearly than years of conversation ever did. And honestly, that part changed me forever. Because once you see how quickly people change when they lose control over your attention, you begin understanding human behavior on a much deeper level. You realize many relationships are not built on mutual respect at all. They're built on emotional convenience. People love having access to someone who constantly tolerates disrespect while remaining emotionally available. There's an old story about the philosopher Diogenes that always stayed with me. Alexander the Great, one of the most powerful men in history, approached him and offered him anything he desired. Wealth, power, protection, influence. Diogenes simply looked at him and said, "Stand out of my sunlight." Imagine the psychological freedom required to respond like that. One man conquered nations, the other conquered dependence. And honestly, that's what the silent exit really is. It's emotional independence. It's the ability to stop needing approval from people who benefit from your insecurity. It's recognizing that peace becomes impossible when your self-worth depends on the reactions of unstable people. But here's the truth nobody talks about. Walking away hurts, even when it's necessary, even when you know it's right. Because humans naturally crave connection. Your mind starts replaying memories at night. You question yourself constantly. You wonder whether you were too harsh or too distant. You think about sending one more message just to explain yourself properly. But that urge usually comes from discomfort, not wisdom. The Stoics believe discomfort reveals attachment. And attachment is dangerous when placed in the hands of people who repeatedly damage your peace. The more I sat with silence, the more I noticed my nervous system slowly calming down. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations in my head. I stopped feeling emotionally drained after every interaction. The chaos faded gradually. Not overnight, but enough for me to realize how exhausted I had truly become. One of the strangest things about the silent exit is that people often accuse you of changing once you stop tolerating behavior that once benefited them. I experienced this personally. Weeks after distancing myself from certain people, one person reached out and said, "You're different now." But what they really meant was, "You stopped allowing me to treat you the same way." That distinction matters. Growth feels offensive to people who relied on your lack of boundaries. And once you understand that, you stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You realize that emotionally healthy people don't punish you for needing distance. Only controlling people react aggressively when they lose unrestricted access to you. If any part of this feels familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people quietly stay trapped in toxic cycles because they fear being misunderstood, abandoned, or judged for finally walking away. But sometimes maturity means accepting that closure will never come from the people who created the confusion in the first place. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave quietly and let your absence speak for itself. And if you've ever experienced that shift personally, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many people watching this noticed others reacting differently once they stopped chasing, stopped explaining, and stopped overextending themselves emotionally. And if these deeper psychological and Stoic philosophy videos resonate with you, subscribing simply helps more people discover ideas like this in a world flooded with shallow noise and performative self-help. The biggest lesson I learned from all this is that peace is expensive, not financially, emotionally. It costs attachment. It costs unhealthy dynamics. It costs the illusion that you can heal people by sacrificing yourself endlessly. But once you experience genuine peace, you stop romanticizing chaos. You stop mistaking emotional exhaustion for love. You stop confusing constant emotional intensity with meaningful connection. And ironically, that's usually when your confidence changes completely. Because confidence isn't loud. Real confidence is the ability to walk away from situations that destroy your inner peace without needing everyone to understand your decision. People sense that energy immediately. When you stop chasing validation, your entire presence changes. You speak differently. You move differently. You stop trying to force people to see your worth because you no longer need their permission to value yourself. That shift is powerful. And honestly, it intimidates people who rely on emotional control. Calm detachment unsettles chaotic people because it removes the leverage they once had over you. That's why silence can feel louder than words. In a world addicted to reaction, restraint becomes power. And maybe that's the real lesson behind Stoicism. Not becoming emotionless, not suppressing feelings, but learning where your energy deserves to go. The Stoics never taught people to stop caring. They taught people to stop surrendering their peace to things outside their control. Toxic people want access to your emotions because emotional reactions give them influence over your state of mind. But once you master emotional distance, the dynamic changes permanently. You stop becoming easy to manipulate. You stop negotiating for basic respect. You stop fearing abandonment because you realize something life-changing. The people meant for your life will never require you to destroy your mental peace just to keep them there. So if you've been feeling emotionally exhausted lately, maybe this is your sign to step back quietly for a while. Not to punish anyone, not to play games, but to hear your own thoughts again without constant emotional noise surrounding you. Because sometimes the most powerful transformation begins the moment you stop forcing connection and finally allow silence to reveal the truth.